Okay, we have Stuart Ingram's Cummins back on the dyno. This truck came to us after we finished it last fall. It had done 1,420 horsepower last fall. He took it back home, and when he was doing startups cold in his garage, he was getting a lot of white smoke stumble, and he wanted to fix that issue. So he had bought this engine from a sled puller previously, which had a really big cam in it, and we decided to put a 188-220 cam in it. Just a little more street friendly. We know I've run that on the quad cab and the truck starts real good. So it came back here. We put a 188-220 cam back in it, and then in the meantime, he also sent his 400% over S&S injectors back to S&S, and they were like, man, these are really old injectors. Let's revise them and get this up to the latest revision of our injectors. So we are back on the dyno, and we started last night, and it is acting a lot happier than it did before, because it did 1,500 horsepower at less fuel quantity than it did 1,400 horsepower before. So we did 1,604 horsepower last night, and I think I can get a little bit more out of it on fuel. And I'm reflashing it now to adjust the regulator current. The first couple tunes I had put in it, we were seeing rail pressure fluctuation, and I fixed that in the tuning. But then when I got to the big tunes, and then it was dropping rail too much because I'd added too much to smooth that out. So I'm trying to find the fine line to where I can still have smooth fuel pressure regulation on tune 1 and still have enough fuel quantity to support tune 5. So that's kind of the thing that I have to do on a high horsepower truck like this, for sure, when you're swinging 600 or 700 horsepower between tune 1 and tune 5. So I'm going to get this dialed in, make a couple more licks on it, and we can send this thing back to New Hampshire, and Stu can enjoy this truck for the rest of the summer. Okay, we're a few revisions in, and we made 1,695 horsepower fuel only. Everything is doing good, and that gets him to #1 spot on the dyno list for 2020. But he wants us to turn a small jet of nitrous on, just basically verify that the kit is working. So if he does dyno days back home, he has something that he can turn it on and make a number. And he wants to put a little bit of a gap on first place. So David Large was at first place this morning at 1656, and so we just went 1695, and we're going to turn a 80 jet on as a single kit on this next dyno pull and see what kind of number it makes with a little bit of nitrous. 1,830 horsepower, and graph is still going up, so I'm going to extend the run out further and see if it makes 1,850 or more. $1,860 horsepower and 2,143 foot-pounds of torque is what we ended up with. That was just turning a little bit of nitrous on, and it went from 1695 up to 1860. So I'm pretty sure Stuart is going to be very happy with this number. When he picked up the truck last September, then we did 1,420 horsepower with before the injectors were revised from S&S, and so the truck is a whole new animal. And I'm pretty sure that he's going to have more power than what his street tires are going to want. So we're probably going to have him drive the thing around. Like tune 1 still makes 1,160 some horsepower. So even turned down, this truck's going to be fast. So I think we're going to get this thing off the dyno and send it on the way. I wanted to do a little street drive for you guys so you can kind of see what it's like to drive a truck that's capable of making 1,695 horsepower on the street, and then 1,860 horsepower with a little bit of nitrous, and it still drives. It's got coolant in it, so you can drive around the block. It's got a radio in it. It's got enough fuel that you can go probably 200 miles on it. So it's does have an 850 cage in it, so you get some creaks and rattles from the cage being welded into the frame. So it is not the quietest drive. And if you've ever seen Stuart Ingraham, the owner of this truck, he is a big man, and I am not so much. So that's why it looks like I'm a little kid in here. I can kind of see over the dash. It's pretty cool. We pretty much had to put the seat on the floor so that his head wasn't in the top of the roll bar with his helmet in it. So we're just going to go a little rip around the block. You guys can see what it's like. It really spools pretty nice. 20 pounds of boost by 2200 RPM. So it's really very drivable with the twin setup that's on it. It's a triple setup. It's a 75 millimeter on the manifold with a pair of 72 millimeters out front. They come up right away. This one does have a full manual valve body in it, so you get to shift your own gears, which is nice for a bigger turbo truck like this. You can stretch out the shifts. You can hear the turbos are right on it.